Hello. This is your boy Brandon Correia, aka EF Hutton of Entertainment, and we are back with another review. And the review we got today is Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, Episode 7. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up. If you think you'd be interested in content like this, some of the biggest name IPs, Rings of Power, House of the Dragon, Andor, with Black Adam coming up, going to be dropping a review for that. Black Panther, obviously dropping a review for that. If you're interested in entertainment news updates pertaining to movies, hip-hop, sports, the Brandon Correia Network is the place to be, so subscribe. You will not regret it. Now let's get into Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, Episode 7. Now, this episode, obviously with the action-packed episode that we got in Episode 6, Episode 7, I had a feeling wasn't going to be obviously as action-packed. They obviously had to deal with the aftermath of Mount Doom basically being created, and there was a lot of aftermath. And this episode was probably the most emotional episode, obviously because of all the casualties and because of the destruction that happened in Episode 6. So there was a lot of things that needed to be dealt with and touched upon, and because there was so much destruction and casualties from the Southland side where Mount Doom was obviously created, there was a lot of emotion, but it wasn't even there where the majority of the emotion of the episode was actually shown and played out. The majority of the episode actually takes place with Durin and Elrond. We actually go back to them because in Episode 6, it really just focused on the Southlands and the orcs and the Númenóreans reaching there and helping them defend that area. We didn't really touch on the Harfoots, and in this episode, we go back to the Harfoots again. Emotional, even like when we're dealing with the Harfoot plots, there's a lot of emotion in this part of the episode. So my favorite part of the episode is the Elrond Durin stuff, and I'm going to get into that in the end. So I'm going to kind of deal with each of the storylines kind of individually because they did jump back and forth in between each of them. So we see how all the different groups are affected by the creation of Mount Doom. We even see that because the Harfoots were somewhat close to where Mount Doom was created, we see that flying debris destroyed a lot of their cargo and wagons and possessions that they had. And not only that, specifically a lot of the crops that they were growing around them to like survive in a sense, right? Because we see the Harfoots approach the encampment where they were going to settle, and a lot of their crops got hit by flying debris, I'm guessing from Mount Doom. So we see the Meteor Man, obviously his identity isn't revealed yet, go up to a tree and try and like revive the tree. Something happens, the tree branch, like he does something to the tree, like a big tree branch falls on Nori's sister and Nori, and she kind of gets scared and he sees that. So I'm guessing he decides to leave. The leader of the Harfoots, I'm guessing, has a conversation with him and kind of guides him in a sense and gives him like this star mapping thing to kind of help him get on his way. So he heads out, and as the Harfoots are kind of doing their thing, we see Nori's friend, I can't remember her name, but she was kind of gathering water in the river, and she sees like this big footstep, and it kind of cuts away and she disappears. And we see like those mage people that were looking for, that ended up at the meteor crash site looking for a Meteor Man. And it cuts back to the encampment and all the Harfoots are hidden. And we see the mage people kind of come up to the tree that the Meteor Man restored and kind of put life back into all the crops. Because there was a point where they thought everything was dead, and he did what he did and everything kind of sprouted back up and they got all giddy. So these mage people saw the tree where he did whatever he did to it was. They saw the little flower, and they kind of sensed in a way, I guess, the direction that he was going, and one of the mages like pointed out and started heading in that direction. And you see Nori just pop up, and I was like, yo, Nori, just sit down. And she was just trying to help Meteor Man out, but she was like, he went that way, so go on now. They disappear, pop up behind her, take like a piece of her hair or something, and her dad comes up with a torch and it was like, yo, get back, or you know what I mean, like, or else. The mage person puts out the flames, buns up their entire cargo. Yo, I was like, that's crazy. Like, I get you were trying to help your friend, but I was like, yo, Nori, you should have just chilled out. So a lot of their cargo ends up getting destroyed, and it seemed like they were about to like give up, and Nori's dad kind of gives like a really powerful speech to the rest of them, being like, we're Harfoots, like we keep on walking, like we do it together. And it kind of reinvigorates Nori to kind of be like, you know what, I need to go help my friend. I need to warn him that there's people coming after him. So we see her friend, her mom, and the leader of the Harfoots, because he's good at creating paths to help them get places, go after Meteor Man to help him out. So that's kind of like that story wrapped up. So now touching on the Numenorians and Galadriel and the Southlanders. So obviously they're close to where Mount Doom is. They're covered in ash. The entire sky is just blocked out, and they're just dealing with casualties. And we see Galadriel link up with Theo, and they kind of go off by themselves trying to regroup with the encampment that's a little further out, that's not enclosed by the smoke, right? Not under the Mordor borders, basically. So they're going, but then we also see Isildur rescue his friend with the queen. And then there's a point where there's a house where the house is on fire and there's a family in there. And we see Isildur and the friend and the queen rescue them. And Isildur gets trapped and the queen ends up getting like fire in her face. And we find out later that she ends up being blind. And I already had a feeling, I'm like, no, her vision is probably gone. She meets up with Elendil and a lot of the other soldiers to head over to the encampment. And we see a moment where Elendil gets emotional because he's like, where's Isildur? Where's my son? And the queen and the friend, Isildur's friend, have nothing to say to Elendil. So they continue on their way to the encampment. And inevitably, we see Galadriel and Theo meet back at the encampment with the Southlanders. And we see him meet back up with his mom and Arendir. We see Galadriel meet up with Hellbrand, which at the end of the episode, they end up heading back to like Elvish lands because Hellbrand's wound is really bad. So Galadriel's like, you need Elvish medicine. And she needs to tell the king about the forces so she can get more elves to come back. Because we see that even though the queen got blinded, Galadriel's like really upset that she dragged the Numenorians here for this. But she was like, don't put your pity on me. The enemies are gathering and I need to go back to Numenor, get more forces and come back because like these guys are actually gathering. And what you were talking about is actually here. So we need to deal with this. So again, remember, all this is kind of popping off back. Like this is going back and forth between all of these plot lines. So the biggest plot line and my favorite point of the episode and the most emotional point of the episode to me was the Elrond and Durin stuff. So it starts off with Durin having a conversation with his father being like, we need to do this to help them out and pleading their case. We see Elrond in the room also pleading their case to the king, Prince Durin's father. And he's like, I need to talk to my son. Everyone else ends up leaving. They make a proposal like, we'll provide you with timber and all these different resources for 5 centuries. So the other like dwarf lords were kind of interested in that, but the king was like, let me talk to my son. And he was like, no, like this is too dangerous. Like their time has come. Whatever. They go back to their quarters where Durin's wife is, and Elrond comes in. They have a look to each other, and they instantly are able to tell that the conversation didn't go the way they planned. And Elrond was like, you know what I mean? I get it. I understand. And we just see Durin get really, really emotional. And this was just like an emotional scene. It was just such a great scene. All the moments with Elrond and Durin were absolutely amazing. Like the character moments and dynamics in this episode were the strongest they've ever been in any of the episodes. A lot of the earlier episodes were a lot of build up and just trying to build those relationships. But now we see the time that they spent building those relationships actually paying off when they have these nice moments and emotional moments between them. Like we really feel it. So there's just a moment where Durin's like, I guess this is goodbye because like, you know what I mean? Like you're not going to be like a mortal anymore. And they just have like an emotional moment. The wife's there getting emotional and Elrond ends up leaving. He gives the mithril back to him before he leaves. We see Durin sit down and throw the mithril next to one of the leaves off the tree that was kind of infested with the black veins. And we see the mithril just by being beside the tree rejuvenate the leaf. So Durin sees that, his wife sees that, and they're like, there's such a nice moment where he looks at his wife and he's like, nah, this is some bullshit. I gotta help them out. Calls Elrond back, and then it literally cuts to them two underground just digging, them two boys. No other help, no other dwarf help, just them two. And they just have this nice conversation about stamina and how Elrond let Durin win in the beginning because he was just trying to get his ear. And there's just this nice saying where he was just like, you're kind of a dwarven elf. And then Elrond goes to Durin and he's like, you're kind of an elvish dwarf, if you think about it. And just really showing that as much as they're different factions, they have similar qualities, and that's why they get along so well. And there's even a moment where Durin says to his father where he's like, Elrond is like my brother, like so much so that it's like to the point where it's like he could have even been birthed in my mom. That's how close I feel to Elrond. And the king wasn't having it at all. Takes off the man's like, I guess, ceremonial like necklace thing to show that he's the prince, and he's like, that's not yours anymore, right? Because right before this, while they're digging, the king and like some guards show up. And they're basically like, and Durin is like to his father, look how much there is, father. There's way more than we thought. And he's like, I'm not even having this. Takes Elrond and he's like, get rid of the elf. kicks Elrond out, and Elrond's just outside of the mountain with a piece of mithril, exhausted. And then we see Durin, and this is where we have the scene of him taking off the necklace. But then after that, Durin has a conversation with his wife, and his wife is like, your father's old and feeble, and once he's gone, this is gonna be you're gonna be the ruler, and this is gonna be ours, and that mithril is gonna be ours, and we're gonna dig. And they just have a nice moment of, you know when you have that good woman just cheering you on and being like, yo, like, don't worry, like, let's just, you know what I mean? We're going to get it. We're going to get it. So that was just a nice moment between husband and wife, kind of reassuring him that he is going to be the ruler one day and that he will be able to help his friend at some point. So like I said, the writing in this episode, like the character dynamics and relationships in this episode were absolutely amazing. This episode was really, really, really emotional, which makes sense because of all the catastrophe and casualties that happened in episode 6. But I am excited for episode 8 to see how they're going to wrap up this season, because episode 8 is the last episode of this season. So I want to see how they're going to wrap it up. I'm interested if they're going to bring Isildur back, because we know that Isildur is not dead. He's supposed to be obviously like a main character going forward. So I want to see how he comes back. But then I also want to see how they're going to end season 1 and how it will lead into season 2. Oh, and a big point that I almost forgot was we see the creation of the Balrog in the mountain, but it was because of Prince Durin's father. He basically took a leaf from the tree and dashed it into the hole where they dug. So it went down into the mithril mine and basically like transformed something into the Balrog. So the Balrog's just down there now. So that was a big point. And I'm pretty sure that is how it ended, or that was the last scene before Galadriel and Hellbrand rode off into the sunset. So like I said, I want to see what pops off in episode 8 and if we're going to get any references or any scenes of them starting to build the forge or them starting to build the rings of power. But like I said, this was an emotional episode. The episodes were getting better and better. The previous episode, episode 6, was such a good payoff of all the build up to it. And honestly, like, the writing and characters in this show are starting to become really strong. In the beginning, I didn't really see the strength of it, but now it's like the storytelling and the characters are starting to catch up with the visual triumph of this show. And it's starting to become like a all-around pretty good show. So I'm excited for next episode, and I'm excited for next season. So that is it for this episode. If you think you'd be interested, if you like this video, hit the thumbs up. If you think you'd be interested in content like this, Rings of Power reviews, House of the Dragon reviews, Andor reviews, big name IP reviews in the future, trailer reactions, entertainment news updates pertaining to sports, hip-hop, movies, subscribe to the Brandon Correia Network. You will not regret it. I appreciate you for watching. Catch you next time.